everyone. Welcome to today's Two Saints podcast show with myself, Mark C, and my co-host, Mark H. How you doing, Mark? It's not a bad time to be a Saints fan, is it, eh? Top four.
all I'll say is we were top of the league, said we were top of the league. We were top of the league, said we were top of the league for 36 hours. But anyway, I just hope everybody enjoyed their weekend. If you're a Saints fan, you probably did. I really enjoyed, the Saints fans bombarding social media with the table and everything else,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Make hay about it while the sun shines. But as I say, I just hope all the listeners are staying safe and keeping well. And,
absolutely,
looking after each other is more important. But, it was great, mate, to be top of the table for the 36 hours.
Absolutely. And still in the top four. So it's not got any worse, thankfully. We're still in the top four, which is great. So fantastic. Onwards and upwards. Brilliant. So just like to remind everybody that the Two Saints show, obviously the Two Saints show, which is the broadcast version of the podcast, is on every Thursday from November the 19th, which is next week, from 1 till 3 p.m. on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. So that's how you can access the radio version of the podcast. So coming up in the first half, we have the Two Saints review of Saints 2, Newcastle 0. Also, in the first half of today's show, we have the Two Saints Club news. Also, an important announcement for you. The Two Saints show, obviously, as we've told you, is moving from the 19th of November next week to 1 to 3 p.m. time slot on Fiesta 95 FM. Still on Thursdays and still available on onlineradiobox.com. Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints Podcast Show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show. So, the Two Saints review of Saints 2, Newcastle 0. Where do you want to start, Mark? Apart from the fact that we dominated the game, Newcastle were no match for us, and pretty good all-round performance in the end. And Theo Walcott up front with Shea like we'd asked for.
Yeah, all I would say is, Shea got my man of the match because he led the line excellently in the absence of Danny Ings,
Yep.
And there was a degree of having to step up to the plate to do that. Theo Walcott, thankfully, as we suggested last week, he slotted into playing the second striker, if you like, very well. But really, at the end of the day, I just want to speak about Oriol Romeu for me because, he since the start of the season, or since the first two kind of losses, he's really, really stepped up in the sense of you watch how he actually plays now. The ball's being moved around a lot quicker. There seems to be a lot more intensity in his game. He looks fitter. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how he's worked on that, say, from the start of the season till now, but he definitely looks like he's sort of a little bit more leaner.
Judging by the photos you and I've seen, Mark, it's all those holidays he takes in the UK and the Brecon Beacons and that. He's obviously been doing quite a lot of walking and hiking and mountain climbing and stuff. Judging by the photos we've seen.
His dog seems to love it anyway. But
that's what it is, I reckon. All those dog walks in the Brecon Beacons.
Say, you gotta talk about him, and obviously you gotta talk about Vestergaard.
Yep.
I'm just delighted that he's proven me wrong, Mark.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too.
We made it in a playful way when we say about the Queen Mary and all that, but the thing is,
he's more of a cruise liner these days.
It's just great to see him coming on the way he has, and the fact is, it sort of feels like we've got a new player, and we've got a defender all of a sudden.
Yep, definitely. And whoever told him to cut his hair, well done. That was a genius move. That was. He certainly cut his hair. He's a brilliant player. He became a different player almost. It coincided with a haircut. It's got nothing to do with that, obviously, but tongue in cheek, we make a bit of a joke of that because since he's had his haircut, he's performed really well.
No, yeah.
Ralph Hasenhüttl was certainly happy. Ralph hailed Saints as fantastic. He was absolutely delighted with the first win over Newcastle as we clinched top spot. Theo Walcott said we work for each other. Yeah, I think we certainly do, and I think that was epitomised by Stuart Armstrong's goal. Sort of epitomised the fact that the team worked together for each other. Yeah, and I thought Armstrong's goal was superb, to be fair.
I have to say, I didn't think Stuart had a particularly good game.
No, not one of his better ones.
I think that the fact that he scored the goal and the way that he scored the goal sort of, and obviously at the end of the day, that sort of secured the 3 points.
Yep. Also, in fairness, not just that, it was also the fantastic save from Alex McCarthy. 86th minute, he'd had nothing to do for the whole game. And 86th minute, he pulled out a worldie, didn't he? To keep his ball down. And fantastic save from Alex McCarthy. So him as well, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, all I would say is, Mark, everybody played their part, even Jack Stevens, because he was playing in a role that was unfamiliar to him. Yeah. The downside probably to his game was that everybody was moving the ball quickly and it looked slightly more laboured from him. But I'm gonna say that it probably was like that because he was playing on the left side of the defence. But
and I think I was quite critical myself of the fact the ball went sideways and backwards quite a lot, and I felt Jack did it quite a lot. But having said that, we discussed this, and in hindsight, I think we've probably been a little bit greedy, to be fair. We just wanted Saints to go for it. And in fairness, they were actually retaining the ball quite well, weren't they? So although it gets frustrating when you think there's opportunities to attack, I do realise that obviously they were bringing it sideways and backwards for a reason. They were looking to change the angle of attack or maybe attack from a different side if they weren't getting any joy down one side or through the middle. So I get why they were doing it. But I think it's just greedy. We all wanted to go top of the league. And I think we were getting a little bit greedy, thinking Newcastle were there for the taking. Let's go for it. And I think that's where it came from. But obviously, after we discussed it,
overall for me, it was a dominant control performance. Newcastle did for long periods of the game they didn't see the ball.
Yeah,
and I can't really think of a clear-cut opportunity that they had on goal.
Yeah,
they had that shot that you spoke about 4 minutes before the end. But apart from that, Callum Wilson got an injury, but he didn't look,
in fairness as well.
Well, you can't say he didn't look because he wasn't getting any service, and that's how much we controlled the game, really.
Yeah, I think also people said they were worried about Vestergaard, facing pace. Well, I hate to tell you this, Callum Wilson's pretty quick, actually, and he kept him quiet all game. So, even before his injury, he kept him quiet. So, credit where it's due.
Just from the Newcastle point of view, on that point though, Mark, I didn't see many balls going in behind, to be honest, which baffled me a little bit. And when Andy Carroll came on, I know you were slightly worried about it. I would have been if we're talking about a year ago. I was at St James's Park when he came on in the December last year and changed the game. We were 1 each with them, and Newcastle went on and won the game 2-1, and he did. He had a hand that actually changing the sort of nature of the way the game.
It's ironic as well because obviously we were doing the watch along, weren't we? And it's ironic because during the watch along, obviously I said to you, I think Saints got to get a second before they bring Carroll on, and no sooner as I said that, he's stripping off and coming on, wasn't he? I was like, no.
It just. I said this to you before as well. Yeah. It just goes to show how far we've come in the last 11 months. We were worried about him, in the December and what happened. And obviously he comes on, last Friday night, and although there was a little bit of trepidation, you sort of felt actually the form that we're in and the way that we're playing, do we actually have that much fear of, that much to fear from an Andy Carroll? And the truth was no. And that was down to the fact that, Newcastle weren't seeing the ball and we were controlling the game and dominant.
Yeah.
And that's more or less what you want. Especially when you're playing, teams that you're expected to beat at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what it was about more than anything else, really. the fact that we won the game and went top was that's bonus territory. But
yeah, and obviously not the first time we've been top of the league. Obviously, we were top of the league in '88 under Chris Nicholl. Granted, it was only after a couple of games, but so 32 years we've waited to go top of the Premier League, Mark. And I tell you what, boy, was it worth the wait, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, the only other thing I want to say about the game, Mark, is that as Theo said, they're playing for each other. And that shows on the pitch.
Yeah.
But the football that they're actually playing at the minute's pretty scintillating. I mean, I would love to be playing Tottenham at home again rather than playing them the second game in the season, because I think at the moment we would give them a game of football.
Well, it's ironic as well, Mark, because I think back to when Saints played quite well under Koeman, and one thing that stood out for me under Koeman, and they are different managers and different philosophies and different systems, and I get that, but there is a common theme here, and I'll tell you what it is, and I've identified it now. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I think I might have done now. And it's to do with the spine of the team. Now, if you remember, the spine of the team under Koeman, we had a really good spine from front to back, really good centre-half, really good holding midfielder, good midfielder that's capable of giving people options, and good attacking. And at the moment, if you look at it, you've got Adams and Ings up front, good attacking unit. Ward-Prowse in midfield gives you those options of opening things up a little bit, and the dead ball obviously option. Romeu is the good holding midfielder, and Vestergaard and Bednarek at the moment, who are forming quite a solid partnership, and Alex McCarthy, who in the last few games has improved. So if you look at the spine of the team at the moment, it's similar to when Koeman's teams were doing well in the fact that the spine of the team was quite strong. And I think our spine now is quite strong. And those two things are definitely in common with when we've succeeded under Koeman. No coincidence. But also, what I do like is Ralph has hit on something that worked for Saints years ago, the old formula that Saints used to have of age and experience. And I think he's starting to blend that together. And if you read his recent comments about transfers, etc., he's talking about eclectically, we might change things slightly in regards to transfers. We might look at somebody with a little bit more experience. That's a great idea. It's a model that worked for Saints before. In our heyday, back in the 80s when we had such a great team, we finished second to Liverpool, it was about experience and youth, and it worked. And I think at the moment, he seems to be doing that. And it's certainly paying dividends.
While you're reminiscing about your childhood again, let's get back to basics here. So on arrival, on a Saints-friendly podcast like ourselves, the question was posed, Mark, right? Yep. I'll put this to you, right? What would you sooner have? So you have Pochettino and Pochettino's squad, right? You have Ronald Koeman and Ronald Koeman's squad, or you have Ralph and Ralph's squad. Yep. Okay, so those three. Okay, now. You can pick any combination you like. You can go with a Ronald squad and Ronald players, or you can go with Pochettino and Ralph Hasenhüttl's squad. Yep. Do you see what I'm getting at? Yep. So, what would you say would be your ideal scenario? So squad and manager.
I would have loved to have seen Ralph with Koeman's squad because of the players that would have been at his disposal. And I think they would have thrived in his current system. That system would have worked for the players we had at the time. And the likes of Tadic, Mane, Pella would have absolutely thrived in that. Absolutely. I mean, they did well under Koeman, but I think with Ralph, they would have been another level again. I actually think if he'd have had those players at his disposal, I think they would have been another level.
Right.
And I think we might even... That season Leicester won the league. I think we might even have pushed them ourselves if we'd had Ralph at the time.
See, I kind of agree, Mark, right? But and a lot of it's to do with obviously being a big Ralph fan.
But I also think there is more togetherness in the current squad.
I've got to be honest. I'm not prepared to get carried away just yet. Yep. I still think he's got a bit to go before I'll compare him to Ronald, because Ralph's been at the club, and yes, he had a lot to work through. Thankfully, we're beginning to see the wood for the trees in terms of, players who are actually at the club, who are playing for the club, rather than players who are at the club but not at the club, if you see what I mean. So, all I would say is, for me, it's still Ronald Koeman's squad, and it would be Ronald Koeman in charge at the moment. And I say that only because he lost a load of players in the summer.
Yeah.
And he had to bring players in, and we more or less hit the ground running. I mean, when you look at it, he finished 7th in the first season, and he finished 6th in the second season.
For me, it's Ralph, because...
But I think if Ralph can keep doing what he's doing at the minute, and he sticks around for a while, I would go along with Ronald Koeman's squad with Ralph Hasenhüttl. But Ralph needs, okay, if he does something this season, then he needs to build on it for next season. But we'll see.
I think for me, I say Ralph purely and simply. Because I feel that Ralph has had a harder job on his hands, because he's had less to work with. There's been less investment. So for me, he's had a harder job, and that's why I put him with Koeman's squad. But I totally agree with that. And that brings us brilliantly to the end of that section. Brings us brilliantly to the review of Saints 2 Newcastle 0. So we'll take a short break, and we'll be back with Saints news.
It's the Two Marks, C&H, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, welcome back, everybody. So, moving on to the Two Saints coverage of Saints Club news. So, Premier League 2 report, Saints 5, Man City 2. Horseman, we deserve this. Horseman says Hasenhüttl has been amazing for Saints B team. Report, MK Dons versus Southampton in the Papa John's Trophy. Team reaction, Dave Horseman, MK Dons 1, Southampton 2. Under 18s report, Aston Villa 3, Saints 3. Sportsbet.io goal of the month for October. Adams listed for Player of the Month award. Hasenhüttl shortlisted for Manager of the Month nomination. Southampton FC versus Wolves screening cancelled. Enjoy a Christmas lunch with Saints legends Matt and Franny. Stop the count T-shirt. Shay Adams making the grade. And that brings us to the end of that section. So we'll start, Mark, at the very, very top. And we start with the Premier League 2 report. Saints beating 5, Man City 2. I tell you what, being top of the league had a knock-on effect, didn't it? In the B team managed to get a win. And what a win that was. And that's hat-trick for Dan and Lundalu, no less. And Ralph Hasenhüttl watched the game as well.
Last season, Mark, right, they did do the double over Man City, right? But I have to be honest, given the way we've started the season, I didn't see this one coming. But all I would say, and I know you're going to touch on it, in a few moments' time, but it was reported, obviously, that after Saints had beaten Newcastle on the Friday night, Ralph turned up for the B team's game on the Saturday morning, I think it was, and he was there in the stands being very supportive. And I'm also led to believe that when the game finished, he gathered the team together on the pitch and basically said to them, look, if you up your game here and you show sort of good performances within the B team framework, there's an opportunity there for you to come on into the first team, or the first team squad and make an impression. And I think if you're saying that certainly to the younger members of the B squad, you've got to be hungry to do that, because that the manager's going to all the home games. He's watching you to see what's happening with your development, and that can only be good in terms of results as well, because. They should want the drive forward, right, and start getting results, and that's besides the coaching that Horseman's doing with them, and I'm sure he's feeling lifted by the whole experience, because all of a sudden, the players know that there's an opportunity there available to them. They know they're being watched every other week by Hasenhüttl, and if they want to be professional footballers and playing week in, week out for a Premier League side, the opportunity's there for them at Southampton Football Club.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, when was the last time we had a Saints manager who actually attended the B team games? Can't remember when we've had that before.
No, I can't.
Got to be a while.
I can't. I mean,
Laurie was probably the last one.
I don't know about other managers, but I do know that, Ronald used to go, but it was very infrequently. It was like once every sort of every 3 months or something like that, Whereas at least Ralph, it would seem, Mark, that Ralph's going every other week to the home games, and I don't know any manager who was doing that, to be fair.
And that's great. Yeah, and it must give them all a lift, surely. It's got to.
I mean, the thing is I've never heard tell of the first team manager going onto the pitch after a game with the B team or the under 23s, right, and speak to them in those kind of terms. And it's got to give you a shot in the arm as a youngster. And honestly, I'm really expecting results now to improve with the B team.
But I think as well, also, given that obviously he slated Michael Obafemi quite publicly, the fact that Ralph has done this as well proves that he deals with it with an even hand, doesn't it? And that's good. So it sends a message to people that he's even-handed. So it's a good message to send out.
I think that's the only way you can be as a modern, in a modern era football manager. That's the only way you can kind of be.
But it's good to see, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is 100%.
Yeah, Dave Horseman said he thought the performance deserved more. And today it was a good performance and probably the best of the season against an unbelievable opponent. And the lads deserve it for all the weeks and weeks where they've backed a few teams that can come away on the wrong side of the results and not got the results. Well, on this occasion, they got it. They got what they deserved. And he also said that Ralph Hasenhüttl has been amazing for the Saints B team. He absolutely has. 100%. Can't disagree with that one.
I mean, all I would say as well, just about Dave Horseman, Mark, at the end of the day, I want all the age groups to be successful. Or as successful as they can be, right? And yes, the last few weeks I've been critical of Dave Horseman, but it's not without, the thing is it's not without foundation, but I'm pleased for him that they got a result. And like I said, hopefully with Ralph watching on and what was said on the pitch, at the end of the game and stuff that acts as a catalyst, and it helps. And hopefully it'll help Dave Horseman do his job,
Yep, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So we'll move on to more good news. Not only did they beat Man City 5-2, they then followed it up by playing in the Papa John's Trophy and beat MK Dons 2-1. The winning goal coming from Kazima Legbe. He scored a late winner. Saints B team beat MK Dons in the Papa John's Trophy. The opener came at the expense of a poor mistake from the Dons keeper, Laurie Walker. Unaware of the incoming Sam Bellis on his first start of the season for the Saints B, the keeper saw the ball stolen from his feet by the youngster on 22 minutes. The Saints took the lead. In keeping with tradition, the winner also came from a mistake. The goalkeeper gifted the ball to a Legbe, who capped off an impressive night with the winner on 93 minutes. So, Saints won. MK Dons won. Saints 2. Saints progressed in the Papa John's Trophy, Mark, which I believe is was it the Johnson's Paint, was it? We used to play in, is that the one?
Yeah.
Is that what it is now?
It was. Yep, it is.
So,
it was basically
good news.
The English Football League trophy, it's called now. And they haven't sort of progressed. I mean, they've got a result. I think they haven't progressed, mate. But what I would say is that they've played 3 games so far. They lost their opening 2, and they've won this one. I'm not sure how many more games they've got to play. I'm not sure if they can still qualify. Because obviously losing the opening 2 wasn't that great a start. But what I did want to say, Mark, and what was telling about the win, on Wednesday night, was the fact that there was a significant change in personnel. Yeah. So there was a lot more. It was a lot more younger side.
It was.
For to turn up against MK Dons and win, that to me that's much more impressive.
Absolutely.
It's much more impressive than where we've been in the competition, because last time out, as you know, we lost to Northampton Town 5-1, and we had a lot of people who had first team squad experience in the lineup. And I think on Wednesday, we didn't have as much of that because a lot of the players from Saturday was rested. Yep. So you had a lot of players from the under 18s.
Yep.
And that got promoted. And I have to say, I was really impressed with them beating the MK Dons.
Well, I must admit as well, what I liked especially was the fact that I'll get to this in a minute. What Dave Horseman actually came out and said about the game plan. Now, this is obviously a game plan we've seen in the first team, the likes of Danny Ings and Shane Long closing the keeper down quickly. Yeah. And the game plan apparently was for them to tackle the keeper. So not only did they win it late by tackling the goalkeeper, which was the game plan all along. Horseman said, if I'm being honest, that was the game plan. To score 2 goals by tackling the goalkeeper is one of those really good nights. It's a good night because it helps them buy into what we're trying to do. Some of the boys haven't played loads this season. So, that's a game plan the first team have used, closing the keeper down very quickly. They've done it in the B team and it's worked. It's worked wonders. So it's nice to know that sort of same kind of playing style starting to carry over, isn't it? And they're starting to see the rewards of that now. And that's good to know.
I think the thing is as well, Mark, is like the proof will be in the pudding over the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Because the thing is I still say even at that age group, because you're providing players for the first team, the bottom line is results. So that's that with Ralph's input, Horseman's coaching and trying to adapt some of the plays, as you say, from the first team. Hopefully that has a knock-on effect and it's upward and onwards for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. So moving on from there, we move on to the under-18s now. Aston Villa 3, Saints 3, 6-goal thriller. Saints under-18s were denied victory by a dramatic Aston Villa comeback on Saturday, settling for a 3-3 draw in the under-18s Premier League. It was Saints who started the brightest in the Midlands, looking to bounce back from defeat at Fulham last time out. Unfortunately, they could only get a draw mark.
Yeah,
but it's not about their age group, is it?
No, it isn't, to be fair. It's about development at that age. But the thing is, it's important in terms of the morale that they're not losing every week. And, I think the good thing I suppose you could take at the minute from the under-18s is that, okay, they're losing one week, but at least, it seems to be that they're putting in a performance because the following week they're either drawn or they're picking up the victory. So little bit of inconsistency, like I said, I don't think it matters that much. Obviously, it's important for morale, but, it's more about the development of the players for me at that stage, certainly definitely. At that age.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I agree with that. 100%. So anyway, we'll move on from there because this is quite good. So the sportsbet.io goal of the month for October, the winner actually was Oriel Romeu. However, the contenders were Oriel Romeu, Rachel Pantin from the ladies team, and Callum Slattery for a free kick for the B team. And Romeu won it, but I've got to be honest, Mark, I thought Rachel Pantin's goal was a little bit better. Quite a hard one for her. She was on the angle, about 20 yards out, lobs the keeper. Brilliant. Fantastic strike from Oriel, don't get me wrong. And Callum Slattery, unfortunately for you, James Ward-Prowse scored a couple of absolutely stonking free kicks recently, which got us a result. A brace of free kicks in one game, which unfortunately upstaged you a little bit, Callum, I'm afraid. So on that basis, you probably did miss out a little bit, I'm afraid. But Romeu's goal, worthy winner, but I thought Rachel Pantin should have won it, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, all I can do is, I've watched the video back of all 3 goals, and I've got to say myself that if I was on the voting panel, and I don't know exactly how these things are decided, I'm assuming that it's put out on social media for Saints fans to vote on, but seeing as I'm not on Twitter, I don't get engaged for that sort of thing. But all I would say is if I was voting, I would have went with Rachel Pantin's goal because I thought it was superb. It doesn't matter who the opposition was; it was just a superb goal.
Yeah.
And Oriel's was great as well. I mean, probably got the nod because obviously it helped to secure the points against West Brom at home. But I tend to be in agreement with yourself. I mean, I've seen Callum Slattery's, free kick, and while it was a good free kick, it is true that you point out that there's been better free kicks scored. But no, I mean, I was pleased with Oriel because obviously it caps, it sort of it heightens the fact that he has come and highlighted the fact that he is playing well. And he is adding shots to his, he's not, I wouldn't say goals at the minute, but he's adding shots to his game. Right. He seems to be having a shoot on goal sort of thing going on at the moment, which is great to see.
Yeah, I'm starting to think him and Stuart Armstrong have got a bit of a competition on how many shots each of them can hit from distance this season, because they've both been having a bit of a pop, haven't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to players who have been worthy of rewards and worthy of this and worthy of that. Shay Adams shortlisted for Player of the Month award, unfortunately beaten to it by Heung-min Son of Tottenham. No major surprise, really. Son's been in sparkling form, hasn't he? And Ralph Hasenhüttl received a Manager of the Month nomination, unfortunately pipped to the post by Nuno Espirito Santos. So, unfortunately, no Player of the Month award for Shay and no Manager of the Month for Ralph, but both deserving of the nominations, and well done to both of them.
Yeah, exactly, man. Again, it's just a reflection of how far we have come.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the month of October, we remained unbeaten. So right. Ralph can feel himself, slightly aggrieved, I suppose, not to actually win the award. But, I mean, there's kudos in being nominated. And as I say, it's just a reflection for both of them of how well Saints are going at the moment.
Although I know some Saints fans will be very happy at the fact he didn't get Manager of the Month, because it can be a bit of a curse at times, can't it?
Yeah.
As we all know. It's not always worked out well for those that have been nominated, has it? So, yeah. So, anyway, news of the next article is the Southampton FC Wolves screening that the club were planning on doing via the Marcus Lee Bear Lounge, the Saints Sports Bar, etc., the Gasworks, has actually been cancelled, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it, there was a little bit of trepidation there, Mark, because they actually had executive boxes, and it was 60 a box as well. And you and I have been in those boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, 60 a box, but anyway, apart from that, I do feel a little bit sorry for the club, but surely they should have thought about it a bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we all knew that the second lockdown was coming, and the fact that they announced it on the week, albeit they announced it I think on the Tuesday, and then obviously the second lockdown was announced on the Saturday for the following Thursday. But I think I would have waited and made a judgment call a bit more. But it's unfortunate for those people that were willing to pay the money to go, and because I'm sure people are itching to sort of see it in any kind of form. And obviously, it's a bit of revenue for the club, which I'm sure they could be dealing with at the minute.
Yeah.
But it was just the timing, the whole timing thing was just unfortunate of the event,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you've covered that brilliantly, Mark. So we move on to the next topic. Enjoy a Christmas lunch with Saints legends Matt and Franny. Saints Foundation offering a chance to win a Christmas lunch with our ambassadors, Saints legends Matt Le Tissier and Franny Benali. We're raising vital funds to continue the vital work with older adults through the second lockdown into 2021. 100% of the donation goes to Saints Foundation, and everyone has a fair and equal chance to win. Yeah, unless we end up in another lockdown, in which case you won't be having lunch with Matt and Franny because you won't be allowed to.
or it's extended.
Very far apart. It'd be a very large table if you've got to be 2 meters apart.
And anyway, good
to hear that the good news, the fundraising goes on, Mark, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I would have thought they're probably going to have the dinner with Franny and Matt at Windsor Castle, but there you
probably.
Anyway, what I was going to say was, I think at the end of the day, it's great that Matt and Franny's given their time, because obviously this is in order to help raise the I think it was £10,000 that they want to raise to support the elderly in the community of Southampton for next year.
That's right.
So I think the fact that they're willing to give up their time to sit down with a Saints fan and do a bit of reminiscing is it's great. And
absolutely.
I mean, I'll certainly be entering the raffle. I've had an email about it that I will be entering the raffle, but I don't want the first prize.
Yeah. And talking of not wanting prizes, how about not wanting T-shirts? I think a few Saints fans who don't want the Stop the Count T-shirt that Southampton released. It was met with some very derisory remarks on social media. Didn't go down very well. Wasn't very well received. Now, I get it. The club were doing it. It was tongue-in-cheek. It was a bit of a dig at the US elections and Donald Trump saying, stop the count of one kind of thing.
The thing is,
I understand why he did it, but it does demonstrate a very small-minded my mentality, doesn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it does, man. I mean, the thing is I don't think it was the US election at all. I mean, I think it's the fact that we went top. So the reference was the US election in the sense of stop the league, stop the league because we're top of it. You know, so but the thing that I don't get is we're in the same league, right? We're not. It's not like in the old days when we were playing at the Dell, right?
Yeah.
You know, and we all get misty-eyed when we think about our time at the Dell. I know I do at certain things.
I know, I do too.
Especially when, you know, you were on top of the players. You were that close to the pitch.
Yeah.
And it made for a fantastic atmosphere because you were that close.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Mark, we're in the same league. You know, we're in the top professional league in England for football. Right? So we're competing, against other sides who are similarly of the same kind of ability. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, the top six don't have a bigger advantage. Of course they do. They can go out and buy £50 million players.
Correct.
You know, we can't do that necessarily. But the thing is don't belittle the achievement by mass producing a T-shirt and then putting it out on sale. Please don't do that because it makes us look like a small club.
Absolutely
the whole idea about moving, you know, to St Mary's was to try and make the club able to compete, you know, and show that we wanted to progress. But then you see things like that, and you know, as I said earlier in the pod, I was over the moon at the weekend because the thing was the whole place was bombarded by Saints fans putting the table up. That was fantastic because I was just laughing the whole, you know, for the 36 hours I was laughing, completely laughing. But I just think the club gauged the mood wrong, you know, and it looks tacky as well. You know, you just sort of sit there and you think to yourself, all right, you know, it was knocked up by Del Boy, you know, Peckham trainers, you know what I mean? But but you know, it was one of those, and it just smacked of small club mentality, you know. That's, you know, we're in there, we're competing at the minute. Let's keep that going. You know,
we're competing.
Let's put a positive spin on it rather than anything else.
Yeah, all I'm going to say is we're competing with the big boys. Let's act like the big boys.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we're in the same arena.
Exactly. Right, moving on. Shay Adams making the grade. It's been a long road for Shay Adams to achieve his dream of establishing himself as a Premier League marksman. Luckily for Saints, overcoming adversity comes naturally to the informed goal-getter. Everyone's got their own story, and this is mine, he tells us, as he gazes out across the King George playing fields in Winchester, just a short drive from his home. The striker's crammed a lot into a football career, still in its early stages, having turned 24 in the summer. A common theme along the way has been a desire to prove people wrong. After a treacherous run of 29 Southampton appearances without finding the net spanning a whole calendar year, his 7 goals have come in the space of just 14 Premier League games since breaking his duck in July. He's no stranger to tough times, hard graft and overcoming adversity. When aged 14, he was released by Coventry City. It hit him hard. Adams found himself at a crossroads of the sport he loved, as did many others in their teens, but was determined to make up for lost time. Football is supposed to be fun, after all. You either fall out of love with football or you fall in love with it, he reflects on the setback. It was something I wanted to pursue and I made it happen. I missed out on it so young, playing with friends. It just made me want to try harder and want to play with my friends even more. I did that at about 16. This is when I came into grassroots football. It's been a huge benefit for me. I've learned a lot through that side of football. It's been a massive help in keeping me grounded and keeping me humble. It's a big difference to all the guys in the dressing room, but everyone's got their own story, and this is mine. At the age of 18, he was picked up by Sheffield United, then in League One, having starred for Derbyshire, non-league Ilkeston. The opposition for his professional debut a month later, everybody, Southampton Football Club, who he ceremoniously dumped out of the League Cup by him and Sheffield United, which paved the way for the future Saints to score twice in the semi-final against Tottenham, only to be denied a trip to Wembley when they were beaten 3-2 on aggregate. A move to Birmingham City in the Championship followed. 22 goals in his third season at St Andrews alerted Premier League clubs to his talents, and Southampton swooped. He'd finally hit the big time. He said it was unbelievable. It was an honour. When the New Saints were interested, I had no other option. It was an unbelievable experience. And he's also added, obviously, that moving, the fact he didn't move to Leeds was huge, wasn't it? Which we'll get to later in the show today. But yeah, it's just nice to hear an article like that, Mark. How hard it's been.
Definitely, mate.
He's getting his just reward, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, you know, it was one of those where when he joined, I think, you know, we both had said, you know, you need to stick with him, stick by him, you know, don't discount him. I think the thing is that lockdown probably came at the right time for him, you know, because he had effectively been sort of frozen out of the team. And obviously lockdown came, you know, he got his mojo. So, you know, I think, you know, fitness was never an issue, Mark, right? And willingness to run and endeavour, and, you know, there was no question of his commitment to everything and putting the effort in. It was just that he wasn't finding the back of the net. And the thing is as a striker, if you're finding the back of the net, as you know, it breeds confidence.
Oh,
you know, and you know, and the thing is it's the catalyst now for him to keep moving forward and keep scoring goals.
Absolutely right. And that's a brilliant way to end that article as well, and then that section. So we're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back after that. And coming up in the second half, we have other football news, Saints in reflection, and Saints in the press. And also an important announcement, the Two Saints show is moving from Thursday the 19th of November, which is next week, to the 1 to 3 p.m. slot, still on Thursdays, still on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton, and still available on the internet via onlineradiobox.com. We'll be right back with other football news.
It's Mark C and Mark H. Mark my word, they're here with everything in the Two Saints show.
Right, welcome back, everybody. Other football news. So starting with the Premier League. Premier League scraps pay-per-view with BBC and Amazon Prime to show matches. Women's FA Cup may not need to be paused during coronavirus lockdown. Loro's predictions, Liverpool's 159 game unbeaten run is finally over. Marcus Rashford welcomes school holiday support climb down. Premier League managers could ask for reintroduction of 5 substitutes. Substitutes rule unlikely to change, says Premier League chief Richard Masters. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney want Wrexham to be a global force. At sporting events, government will not set roadmap for fans returning to grounds. Gary Monk, Sheffield Wednesday sacked the Swansea Leeds and Birmingham boss, ex-Swansea Leeds and Birmingham boss, and he's been replaced with Tony Pulis. Jude Bellingham gets an England call-up, the Borussia Dortmund player. Greg Clark resigns as Football Association chairman after a remark about black players. And the Gunnosaurus, Arsenal mascot, returns to club after redundancy. So there we go. That's certainly a packed section of other football news. And starting with the PPV, Mark, has been scrapped by the Premier League and BBC and Amazon Prime to show matches. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is just on that one, Mark, common sense prevails. I mean, why has it taken so long to get to this juncture? You know, it should have occurred to them whenever it was first mooted that they were going to be going for pay-per-view. But the good thing was that, you know, there was £300,000 worth of money that was donated to different charities, different organisations, you know, and good on the different supporters groups for organising that and doing that.
Definitely.
But, you know, when pay-per-view was first mooted, you know, people just basically turned around and said, well, I don't understand why it's not the same sort of scenario as the first lockdown, when there was games that were available free to air through Pick TV and the likes on Freeview, you know, and you had BBC games. I mean, the banner headline is, you know, BBC games free to air, and the actual reality is that there's only one BBC game in amongst that lot till the end of November. You know, basically great if you're a subscriber to any of these channels like Sky Sports, BT Sport, or Amazon Prime. But if you're not, you know, but like I said, I just didn't understand why they didn't adopt this philosophy. You know, you knew that it was the second lockdown was happening and everything else, And they did good stuff in the first lockdown. Why didn't they follow that example on?
Absolutely.
But thankfully, common sense has prevailed. And, the people who subscribe to those different channels will be able to watch a bit of football.
Absolutely. And that's great. And that is great. So, more good news. The Women's FA Cup may not need to be paused during the coronavirus lockdown. The decision to pause the Women's FA Cup during England's 4-week lockdown could be reversed by the government. The Sports Minister, Nigel Huddleston, posted on Twitter to say talks had begun with the Football Association. The first and second rounds of the Cup were initially scheduled for this month. He said, we're in discussions with the FA about the Women's FA Cup to see if a solution can be found that means the competition does not need to be paused. So that's good, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mark, given that last week we had the first round of the FA Cup and there was loads of non-elite teams, and lower than the National Conference League or the National League, given that there was loads of teams in that first round, it would make sense to me that, the FA Cup women's games should be sort of played, really. Congestion, in the fixture list and things like that.
Right, the Women's FA Cup may not need to be paused during the coronavirus lockdown. The decision to pause the Women's FA Cup during England's 4-week lockdown could be reversed by the government. Sports Minister Nigel Huddleston posted on Twitter to say talks had begun with the Football Association. The first and second rounds of the Cup were initially scheduled for this month. He said, we're in discussions with the FA about the Women's FA Cup to see if a solution can be found that means the competition does not need to be paused. That's got to be good news, Mark, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is what was seen last week in the men's FA Cup first round, that basically, we had teams that were non-elite clubs basically playing in that first round, and they were allowed to compete and play in that first round, and they'll be playing in the second round as well, which is this month. So, I think it's only right and proper that the women should be afforded the same opportunity. I mean, I believe they've got 2 rounds of the FA Cup during this month as well. So it'd be interesting to see if it goes ahead. I mean, obviously, just to point out the Saints fans, that in the next round, Southampton actually are away at Bournemouth women.
Well, that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how it goes there.
Definitely. Right, move on to the next article. Loro's predictions. Liverpool's 159-game unbeaten run is finally over. Don't bother checking the record books, however, because this sequence only exists in an alternative universe based on Mark Lawrenson's Premier League predictions. He thoroughly lost the plot, hasn't he?
This is basically after 160 weeks or whatever it is. He actually forecast, right? So he had, for the last 159 weeks, he has predicted that Liverpool would win every game, right? And in this 160th week, for the first time ever, since he's been doing this predictions column, taking on special guests, I think for the last 4 seasons at least, it's the first time that he's actually predicted Liverpool to lose, right? And they went and drew, right? But I'm highlighting it, Mark, to show the hypocrisy of these so-called pundits, right? Because they all come to the party. They all come to the party with the bias of the clubs that they played for. And I always turn around and say to people, have your own thoughts and opinions. Do not be swayed by these pundits. I'm not saying that they don't know more about the game because they played the game, but they come to the table with a bias towards the club or clubs that they played for. And I don't think that's particularly healthy. I really don't.
Move on to something much healthier. Marcus Rashford welcoming the school holiday support climb down. The government is set to spend more than £400 million to support poor children and their families in England following the campaign by footballer Marcus Rashford. And obviously over to you, Mark. I know why you've included this. And over to you now.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is finally, he has more or less got, what he wanted from the government, and more party his elbow for pressing home the point, if you like, and
absolutely right,
and making sure that it was kept, top of the agenda and in focus for the government to actually do something about it. Because if he hadn't kept at it, I just think that a lot of people, who are struggling would have missed out,
right,
with young children.
Absolutely right.
And more part of his elbow for doing it. I wish, more footballers, I know that a lot of footballers do stuff quietly behind the scenes. I mean, it's kind of ironic because in Marcus's case, I know he does a lot for, the people of Manchester, especially young families and stuff like that there. So, he's been doing it for a long time before it came to sort of public recognition, public awareness or recognition. So more part of his elbow. And like I said before to you, Mrs. Rashford, you raised a good one.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, top marks, Mrs. Rashford. Great job you've done there, raising your boy. And Marcus Rashford, great example to set the young people. Well done, sir.
Yeah, 100%.
Fantastic. Right, moving on to the Premier League again. Premier League managers could ask for the reintroduction of 5 substitutes, despite the fact the concept's twice been rejected. And obviously, the head of the Premier League said it's probably not going to be reversed. So, be interesting to see what happens there, Mark. Because obviously, certain managers want it, and the head of the Premier League said, no, it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, all I'd say is from my own personal viewpoint, and I know it's one that you share yourself.
I do.
I think it makes for an unlevel playing field. I think it's the top clubs trying to set their own agendas again. Yeah. I was disappointed this week to hear that Ralph himself and Martin Simmons actually support the 5 sub rule, which baffled me, but I suppose it gives an opportunity to put youngsters on the bench. But it's, to my mind, it's not a level playing field. And why would you vote for something that really at the end of the day you're going to be at a disadvantage? And that's my argument.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't get, if a team's bringing on, a £50 million footballer, and you're bringing on Joe Bloggs. No, no offense to my club, but you're bringing on Joe Bloggs from down the road. There is a subtle difference there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, there is. Definitely. Yeah, no, 100%. Right, moving on to the next story. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney want Wrexham to be a global force. Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds wants to turn National League club Wrexham into a global force. He and fellow actor Rob McElhenney want to buy the club from fan owners Wrexham Supporters Trust. Deadpool star Reynolds and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia's McElhenney shared their vision with members of the Trust on Sunday. This is the third oldest club on the planet, and we don't see why it can't have a global appeal, said Reynolds. We want Wrexham to be a global force. He was speaking during a virtual presentation to Trust members, after which the duo issued a mission statement, this is a bold one, in which they pledged to always beat arch rivals Chester. And they also pledged to protect the heritage that's made Wrexham and the racecourse ground such a special place to watch football for the last 156 years. To reinforce the values, traditions and legacy of the community, we understand and respect the intense loyalty and love for the club and how it's woven into the fabric of the town and its supporters. To use our resources to grow the exposure of the club, of course this should be in concert with protecting the heart and spirit of a community-led historical icon. But why can't the third oldest club in the world have a global appeal? To reward the faith of the supporters who stood by Wrexham through its history by putting everything we have towards what all fans want most for their club, and that is to win, win, win. Our intention is to be part of the Wrexham story rather than Wrexham becoming part of our story. Yeah, the fairy tale sounds nice.
I mean, I've read the article, mate, and their intentions seem, honest. That's the one thing I would say. All right, you might be talking about 2 Hollywood actors, and you'd probably think there's egos there at play, but I have no reason to doubt what they're saying. And right. Certainly they want to recognise, the history and the people of the football club and the community around that football club, as well as move it forward. I think the thing about Chester, if they're looking to move it forward, I don't think they'll be playing Chester too often. So I don't think that's a worry personally. But having said that, I mean, the trust, I know the trust there, they've done a fantastic job. And I have to say to you, Mark, especially for disabled fans, that, bear in mind that they're in the national conference, right? And I've got to say to you that obviously there's not a lot of money there. But if you compared some of their disabled facilities, right, to some of the Football League clubs, League One, League Two, even in the Championship, they've got better facilities there.
Yeah,
at Wrexham. So
definitely.
The thing is I'm sure the trust will obviously be hoping that it's being passed over to safe hands, because certainly they've looked after the club very well.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's hope in the future Wrexham get back into the Football League, because it's where they belong.
Yeah,
really.
Definitely.
I remember them when I was a kid, and they were a Football League for a long time before they fell out. So let's hope they can get back there sooner rather than later.
Absolutely right. So, crowds at sporting events. The government will not set a roadmap for fans returning to grounds. They've refused to say when it expects spectators to be allowed back inside sports venues in England. The sports minister said he wanted it to happen as soon as it's safe to do so, but despite requests from MPs, he declined to provide a precise roadmap for sports.
Yeah, I mean, I get that the reason why this came up, Mark, was it was discussed in Parliament this week, because there was an online petition that went up about, we want, fans back in the stadium, and we want it discussed and whatever, in Parliament. And I think it got, the online petition got 200,000, over 200,000 signatures, which is why it had to be discussed in Parliament. Yep. It was organised by a Sheffield United fan. So obviously this article has come up as a consequence of the fact that it got discussed this week. But what I would say is given the current set of circumstances, I just think that at the moment it has to go on to the back burner, and anything like that may happen in due course, but not at the minute.
Right, just a quick one on this one. We're not going to dwell on this one for long because we talked about it. Sheffield Wednesday, Gary Monk was sacked. Tony Pulis has been given the job. Bit of a Mark Hughes type appointment, Mark, do you think? Tough on Gary Monk.
I think the thing is like we spoke about this briefly. Obviously, it's unfortunate for Gary Monk to lose his job, but I think the fact that they clawed back 6 points, because they basically lost 12 points and then they appealed it. It was reduced to 6. And I think the fact that they've managed to claw those points back, especially after Gary Monk not having a great start to the season, really, they've gone for the change. And it would seem that they've gone for somebody with relevant experience. And I would say that is because their main aim for this season is to avoid relegation.
Yep.
And obviously, Tony Pulis has been round the block, and hopefully with his appointment, Sheffield Wednesday, the Owls, they'll be able to do that.
So moving on to England, Jude Bellingham made his England debut, Mark.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd bring this one up because I had a little bit of laughter when we did a Jude Bellingham article before. I have to say, Mark, I've watched him play. I think he's better than Jordan Sancho.
I'd agree with you. He's quite a baller.
He is. And the thing is, he might be... I don't like doing the comparison thing. He's Jude Bellingham. But, they might actually have a replacement there for the talents of a Paul Gascoigne type. Because that's who he reminds me of. And, if he's that good, and he certainly looks it, England could have lift off him. I mean, you got to remember as well the age of him, 17 years of age. And he made his debut against the Republic of Ireland there on Thursday night. And the sky's the limits. And it at least maybe has you and I eating humble pie when we're talking about
just
the retiring of the Birmingham shirt. I know you particularly couldn't believe it, but maybe in hindsight, maybe this guy is, I mean, he obviously looks quality. So
yeah, he's a quality player.
So just an interesting one, really, and obviously, 17 years of age, getting his first cap. Let's hope it's the first of many. Let's hope he goes on and has a stellar career for England.
Well, he'll certainly have a longer career than the Football Association chairman, Greg Clark, who's resigned after remarks about black players, Mark. He should have done too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I think he realised when he did it, and obviously he's fallen on his sword. But the one thing I want to say is, Mark, is this is the FA's chance to modernise.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely right.
To modernise and reflect society, right? Whether it's Asian, whether it's black, whether it's disabled people, whether it's gender people, but let's try and reflect society as a whole. Let's not be the white male club. Let's not be that closed club. Let's open the doors and make appointments that reflect society at large. I tell you what has disappointed me is there has been candidates pushed forward for different roles in the FA, and people have sort of backed off the idea. And that sort of upset me a little bit in the sense that, the thing is if you want to have effective change, you have to have people who want to affect that change in the major places.
Absolutely right.
But like I said, it's a great chance now for, the FA to basically show that it's prepared to modernise and have people of different, backgrounds, diversity and everything else in those roles. But whether people grasp the nettle, I don't know, mate. I really don't know. But I really hope that they do. I really hope that it modernises and it reflects society as a whole.
No, I totally agree. So moving on to news of the Gunnosaurus. The Gunnosaurus has been reappointed at Arsenal. Woohoo! But he's not the only one. They've obviously got a roster of people to do it now. So I think his salary might have gone down a smidge, Mark.
I mean,
good news,
this surprised me. This did, because when I read it, I was slightly baffled. I've got to admit. I mean, it's good that it sort of came back. But then I suppose the guy who plays the Arsenal mascot, I mean, like you said, he's on a roster with everybody else. So I'd imagine, I was surprised to read the salary he was on, because I did think to myself, no wonder they've cut him from the staff at Arsenal. But obviously he's going to probably have to get a full-time job now, because I think at the end of the day, the mascot's only going to be used on match days, which basically means that he's looking for a job probably for 99.9% of the month, because he's probably only going to turn up as the dinosaur for Arsenal, once a month. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a bit of a strange one, but obviously it's good for the kids that, the Arsenal dinosaur's back.
Yeah, definitely. Right, that brings us to the end of the other football news. So up next for you, we've got Saints in Reflection, and this week it is Peter Osgood, and this is from our very good friend Andy Bartlett, friend of the show, who does these for us each week. And we'll be back after Saints in Reflection.
As I write this, I can look up from my desk and see my framed collection of 1970 SO World Cup coins. They're one of those collectibles that people think must be very valuable, but in fact they're almost 10 a penny on eBay. One of those coins features Peter Osgood, a player regarded as the complete number 9, great with his head and his feet. He was the undisputed king of the King's Road in the early to late 60s, vital to what was then a very successful Chelsea side. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that less than 4 years after that World Cup, at his peak age of 27, Ozzy would be a Saints player. He was to be the first of Laurie McMenamin's marquee signings, long before that dreadful term entered common currency. Peter Osgood first came to my attention in Chelsea's run to the 1970 FA Cup final against Leeds. He scored in every round, the last of just 9 players to do so. You have to be a bit charitable with that feat, as he didn't score in the final at Wembley that finished 2-2, but he did score the equaliser, a magnificent diving header in the Old Trafford replay. Ex-Saint David Webb then finished the job by supplying the winning goal. It was a game that provided an early lesson for me about the fickle nature of plastic fans. Just about everyone in the playground at St Mark's Primary School in Shirley wanted Leeds to win. I was the lone voice rooting for Chelsea. This was mainly on the basis that I recognised that while Leeds had great players, there was something very wrong with their attitude to the game. But the morning after Chelsea lifted the cup, it seemed that everyone had been supporting them all along. Ozzy had something of a knack in scoring in major finals. In 1971 he helped Chelsea defeat Real Madrid in the final of the late lamented European Cup Winners' Cup. Then a year later he scored as Chelsea lost the League Cup final to Stoke City. Peter Osgood was born in Windsor in 1947, and I believe he lived there all his life. Arsenal were interested in signing him, but he didn't fancy the long commute to Highbury, so he joined Chelsea, making his debut at 17 and scoring 2 goals in the League Cup tie against Workington. From that time, the goals just kept flowing. In the 10 years he played for Chelsea, he scored 103 goals in 279 appearances. But there was much more to Ozzy than putting the ball in the net. His fabulous touch on the ball made him a great provider. In fact, he could probably have played with great ability in any outfield position. You might imagine that such a truly great player would be a first choice in the England side. It didn't quite work out that way. He was in the original squad of 40 selected for the 1966 World Cup, yet missed the cup when it was reduced to 22. Ozzy made 2 appearances as substitute in the group stages of the 1970 World Cup. They made up half of the paltry 4 caps he was to win in his career. It seems that Sir Alf Ramsey recognised his ability, but distrusted what was seen as something of a playboy attitude. That included a flirtation with Raquel Welch, one of the biggest film stars of 1972. She later donned a t-shirt with the slogan, "I scored with Peter Osgood." So how did the player who was the essence of Chelsea come to be a Saints player? There were 2 main reasons. First, he had a series of falling outs with the manager, Dave Sexton. Apparently this culminated in a suggestion from Sexton that they locked themselves in his office and sorted out man to man. That was a very brave suggestion. For all his silky skills, Ozzy was a player who could look after himself, a fact recognised by none other than Norman Hunter of Leeds. Fortunately, they both backed down. The other main reason was that Chelsea had overreached themselves financially in building a grandiose new stand at Stamford Bridge. They were on a slippery slope towards bankruptcy, and selling their major asset was a short-term solution. Cue Laurie McMenemy, who had just made the transition from Saints team manager designate to full team manager. When that happened in late 1973, Europe had seemed our most likely destination. Unfortunately, the bad results just piled up, and in March we were 18th out of 22 teams in the old First Division. Signing Peter Osgood would serve 2 purposes. It would establish Laurie as a manager intent of changing the way that Saints were perceived in football. More importantly, Ozzy would score the goals that would keep us up. The deal was done for £275,000. That was a huge amount, not only for Saints but for any First Division club at the time. A few weeks earlier, the British transfer record had been set at only £350,000 when Bob Latchford moved from Birmingham City to Everton. It should never be wrong to sign a world-class player, but in hindsight that money might have been better spent in signing 2 or 3 reinforcements better suited to a relegation battle. It was a perfect example of the right player at the wrong time. Peter Osgood made his Saints debut away at Stoke. They had also been trying to sign him to create a partnership with Alan Hudson, another player discarded too early by Chelsea. That game ended in defeat, and it set a pattern. We were apparently signing Ozzy in instalments. The part that scored goals didn't arrive until the last game of the season. We had to beat Everton at Goodison Park to stand any hope of survival. We managed the impossible, winning 3-0 with Ozzy scoring. But being Saints, the results went against us and we were relegated. With the quality in the side, including Osgood and Shannon, there were hopes that Saints would bounce back immediately. In actuality, the players struggled to come to terms with the second division. At times Osgood shone, but all too often he looked like an expensive diamond in a cheap setting. In many ways you couldn't blame him for being unhappy. Being turned over by Millwall, Bolton and Blackpool was not part of the deal when he signed for Saints. Every week there seemed to be a rumour about a big club wanting to sign Osgood. There was even talk of return to Chelsea. Things came something of a head in January 1975, when Laurie gave a very frank interview to the Daily Echo, discussing Osgood, with the headline, "A Dream Which Failed." Amazingly, Ozzy remained with Saints for the 75-76 season, and we were all thankful that he did. His brilliant displays became more regular, including 2 goals and a thumping of promotion-bound Sunderland at the Dell in December 1975, a game featured on Match of the Day. He was also instrumental in winning the Cup, including the deftly worked free kick that enabled Jim McCalliog to score the winning goal in the quarter-final at Bradford. Ozzy became one of a select group of players to win the FA Cup with 2 different teams. In reports at the time, he said he actually enjoyed our win more because he held the cup at Wembley. The whole squad partied hard after beating Manchester United, none more so than Ozzy. The tales of him stealing the FA Cup have been oft repeated and embellished, and possibly also include Jim Steele and other characters. The story goes that he bet Peter Rodrigues a bottle of champagne that he could steal the FA Cup, and in a flash it was the boot of his car. Before he made it home, he seems he stopped off at a burger van and gave the owner a drink from the cup. I slept with it that night, he recalled. I've slept with worse, I tell you. The following day, he smuggled the trophy back into the club, dumping it outside McMenemy's office. The 1976-77 season didn't go quite as planned. The expected promotion push never happened, and Ozzy got itchy feet again. He actually had a brief loan spell at Norwich in the First Division towards the end of the season, playing 3 times without scoring. Things came together for Saints in the 77-78 promotion season, and Ozzy was expected to play a big part. It all unravelled in a fiery game at Blackburn Rovers on November the 5th. Ozzy did not react well to disparaging marks were made by John Bailey and received a red card, followed shortly after by the dismissal of Steve Williams, instigated by the same player. Even though very few Saints fans were actually at Ewood Park to witness the incident, something of a group memory developed. That meant Bailey, later to join Everton, was on the receiving end of terrible abuse whenever he visited the Dell after that. The incident seemed to cause Ozzy to fall out of love with football. He never played for Saints again, bringing the end to a spell in which he played just 126 games and scored 28 goals. He often pointed out that he did make an important difference, as his last goal for Saints was the winner against Orient in October 77 that gave us a vital 2 points on the way to promotion. He moved on to Philadelphia Fury, where he was managed by Alan Bell for a short spell, and inevitably he did go back to Chelsea for a brief run in the relegation season of 78-79. That meant we saw him at the Dell for one last time in a 0-0 draw on Boxing Day 1978. Ozzy's career ended that season, far too early at the age of 32, having played 440 games and scoring 134 goals. Later on he would confess that he left Saints prematurely. With his ability he could even have dropped back to play midfield or sweeper, and who knows what a team of Shannon, Keegan and Osgood might have achieved. One oddity you might notice about Ozzy, if you look back at footage of him playing in our yellow away shirts, is that they are a different shade from the other players. The reason is that he was allergic to the nylon that was becoming popular and had to wear specially made cotton shirts. If you ever do a tour of St Mary's, they have his framed shirt from the cup final, and you can see the difference. After retirement, Ozzy trod the familiar path for footballers from the 1960s, a failed pub venture followed by drifting into the after-dinner speaking circuit. For some years he was actually banned from Stamford Bridge for daring to criticise the club. It was not until Abramovich took over in 2003 that he was welcomed back into the fold and became a matchday host. He died of a heart attack in March 2006, aged just 50. His ashes were buried under the penalty spot at the Shed End, and in 2010 he was immortalised with a statue outside the stadium. For me personally, if there was one game where Ozzy's brilliance shone through, it was his demolition of Olympique Marseille in the first round of the European Cup Winners' Cup. The build-up to the game against a very strong French side was not great. We'd have started the season as early favourites for promotion. Those hopes had been dented by a 2-1 home defeat by Carlisle, followed by a 4-0 thumping at home and the traditional defeat at Millwall. Rather than going up, a relegation battle looked likely, as by mid-September we were still without a league win. Suddenly, in front of a decent evening crowd of 19,000 at the Dell, things seemed to click into place. Ozzy absolutely tormented the visitors. He was simply unplayable. It took a bit of time to make the breakthrough, then Marseille were hit by a whirlwind. On the half hour, Ozzy headed the ball across goal for Malcolm Waldron to shoot home. 3 minutes later, a free kick from Jim Steele was headed in by Shannon. Then in the 35th minute, the fast-developing Steve Williams crossed for Ozzy himself to score a trademark. An all-action first half ended with Ian Turner saving a penalty, despite Marseille having 2 goes at it. That was when we really knew, thanks mainly to Ozzy, it was to be our night. For Peter Osgood, as a Saints player, that was the pinnacle. And it was never that good again.
It's the Two Marks, C&H, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, welcome back, everybody. So, over to the last Saints in the press. Hasenhüttl urges Saints to stay hungry after going top of the Premier League. Hasenhüttl can see it means something for Walcott to play for Saints. Hasenhüttl says Che Adams is a role model for Saints after going from zero to hero. Great choice. £15 million man, glad he didn't join Leeds. Lockdown helped me. And Lindelöf keen to show boss Hasenhüttl he's the one. Southampton, Hasenhüttl slams Michael Obafemi. And report, Celtic and Southampton both want to sign Hussein Balic. So, Hasenhüttl urges Saints to stay hungry after going top of the Premier League, Mark, and so he should, and I'm very glad he did.
Yeah, no,
Don't rest on your laurels.
I think it was important to remind, the players that even though they've reached the summit, for a short time, the thing is the hard work has only just started, and that's how I read it.
Yep.
The hard work's only just started. It's about maintaining what you're doing and staying hungry for every game that's to come.
Yep, absolutely right. Spot on there.
And as Theo said, working together, working as a unit, and like I said before, I always say the key is about moving the ball quickly. Yeah. Quickly, you get the chances.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just think it's a timely reminder from Ralph to the team that the hard work's only just started. You might already be near the summit, but the hard work's just started.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yep. And talking to Theo Walcott, Ralph Hasenhüttl said he can see it means something for Walcott to play for Saints. Yeah, it certainly does, Ralph. And we can all see that as well. I think it's fair to say, Mark, since he came in, he's proved a few doubters wrong. He's put in some strong performances. He's certainly been good with the old assist front. I think it's 3 assists in 2 games now. It's not a bad feat, is it? And
No.
it's definitely, you can definitely see it does mean something for him to be playing for the club again.
Mate, having the second coming for him has given him a new lease of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the thing is he's
actually said he feels like a kid again, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is like, that's great to hear, because the key for him, undoubted talent that he's always had.
Yeah.
But the key for him is playing games, right? Producing, right, and staying injury free. Those are the things that Theo needs to do for himself. Because one of the issues that I've always had is, he's promised a lot, but not delivered quite as much as what's been expected. It's been a disappointing career, although his bank balance probably wouldn't reflect that necessarily.
No, I know what you mean. No, I agree with that. Definitely. Yeah, and talking of another player in the Saints team, obviously the player that Theo played up front with, Che Adams. Ralph Hasenhüttl said he's a role model for Saints after going from zero to hero.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, we seem to be speaking about Shell up, but the thing is it's richly deserved praise.
Yeah.
And he has.
And obviously, Shea himself said it is a good choice not to join Leeds as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, just to cover both of those in a nutshell, I mean, the thing is Leeds had shown an interest in January. I think the thing is I don't know whether the club had actually considered selling them or not. And I don't know whether Leeds came back in the summer. Although in the summer, I don't think he would have moved, before the start of the season. So all I would say is that, persistence was the thing, and obviously, like I said before, earlier today, he found his mojo in the lockdown, and that's showing. Hence, we've seen 7 goals in 14 games, and he's came back rejuvenated. And I wouldn't say a different player, because he's always tried to work hard at his game. I just think things weren't coming off for him initially. Whereas now it seems to be he's got a bit of a Midas touch, in the sense that everything he touches turns to gold at the minute.
You're not wrong there.
Or that should be goals, I should say.
yeah, brilliant. And talking of goals, Dan and Lindeloo, off the back of a hat-trick, said he's keen to show Ralph Hasenhüttl that he's the one. Well, given the way Ralph's spoken about Michael Obafemi, Dan, you probably are, actually. I mean, to a degree.
The thing is, Dan has a real opportunity at the minute, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the thing is that we're going to come on to Michael Obafemi in a minute.
Yeah, we'll cover them together as well. Because
the thing is Dan has definitely put himself ahead of Michael in the pecking order. And we've seen that by the fact that, you know, Ralph seems very keen at the minute to introduce him from the bench.
Yeah.
You know? So he's clearly ahead of Michael Obafemi in the striking stakes, you know, and you know, for him to move ahead of him because he is 2-3 years younger.
Yeah,
you know, he's a couple of years younger anyway. I'm not sure exactly what age he is, but he's a couple of years younger than Michael Obafemi. You know, for him to move ahead of him at this stage in his career, you just hope that he keeps developing and everything else. I mean, the thing is he's always been kind of explosive when he's got on the ball. I haven't always been convinced by his goal return, but obviously this hat-trick that he scored against Manchester City, you know, that should also be forcing the issue for him to get into the first team squad at Southampton, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's got a massive opportunity, and given that Ralph slammed Michael Obafemi the way he has, Mark, and we'll obviously talk about that now. I think Dan Lindeloo's got a huge opportunity, hasn't he? Yeah. Michael Obafemi must be. I just think Michael Obafemi's probably a little bit worried, to be fair. He's been slated by the manager about his professionalism. Dan Lindeloo appears to be on fire at the moment. Yeah. I'd be a worried boy if I was Michael Obafemi.
Well, you would be. You know, I use the same terminology that I use with you, you know, before we do this podcast, when I say, Mark, always remember to bring your A game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where, you know, the thing is Dan is bringing his A game at the moment every week. And the thing is through that, he's managing to force his way into the first team squad and onto the pitch as a substitute. And the thing is like, you know, if he wants that to continue and for him to develop his Saints career, you know, if he keeps doing that and he keeps scoring goals in the B team, then he will get the recognition and he might start a few games.
Absolutely right. Right. Yeah, I think he probably would, to be fair. Right, I think that's covered those two as well. So we'll move on to the next article. Celtic and Southampton both want to sign Hussein Balic. He's known as a bit of a speed merchant, Mark. He's been clocked at 39 kilometres an hour by all accounts, so and available for about 2.8 million quid. So if Mary Elianusi would like to go to Celtic, we'd be quite happy to bring Balic in, wouldn't we?
Yeah. I mean,
not much of a gamble either for that money, is it?
No. I mean, the thing is, again, it goes, you know, if it's true, and you know, we've yet to get confirmation on these things, but you'd imagine that obviously it's an area where Saints would be looking at, you know, especially if El Sanusi goes to, you know, Celtic.
And you know what? I can hear everyone screaming at you now. He got a hat-trick for Celtic. Yeah, for Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. Remember that, everyone.
Yeah,
Celtic in the Scottish Prem.
I mean, all I would say in regards to him is whether he goes in January or whether he goes at the end of the season. You know, or whether Saints decide to keep him.
Yep.
You know, everything's open. But what I'm saying is if he did go to Celtic, then obviously there's an opportunity for someone to come in there in that position. And obviously this Austrian lad is somebody that they're looking at. And it is a no-brainer in the sense that it's cheap as chips. You know, it's well within Saints' financial compass to be able.
Well, not only that, and being you know Austria as well, Ralph will know about this guy.
Exactly. So you know the thing is I'm not saying it's a definite, but I would discount it. But obviously that all depends on whether El Sanusi gets moved, because I don't necessarily think it's just Celtic that's interested. I mean, we had interest from one or two Spanish sides as well. before he made the decision that he wanted to go back to Celtic again.
Yep, absolutely right. Yep, I agree with that. So yeah, we'll it's watch this space on that one, isn't it? So we'll see what happens on that one.
Definitely.
But that has brought us to the end of that section, Mark, and it's also brought us to the end of today's really good and really show. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining us. It's goodbye from myself.
Yeah, and it's goodbye from me. I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening, and take care of each other. Look after one another. Try and do a random act of kindness for somebody, and keep safe and keep well. Look after yourselves.
Absolutely right. Just to remind you all, we have an email address now where you can contact us, and it is the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com. You can message us on there. Anything you'd like to tell us, anything you'd like to give us input-wise for the show, we'd appreciate it. And coming up, we've got ways to listen to the Two Saints Podcast. Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints Podcast Show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show. Right, there we go. So, thank you very much for joining us. Join us again next week when the Two Saints go marching in again. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.